Hey, YouTube. So today I'm going to show you how to use two-part silicone to reproduce almost any object you want, like little bird skulls, masks, jewelry, human skin, and tons more. So check it out. So today we're going to be making a mold of this little silver heart. This heart was sculpted in wax and then cast in sterling silver. And we're going to be taking a mold of it so that we can make more, as many more as we want. I'm going to be using Smooth-On's Rebound 25 silicone rubber, and that's pretty much it. There's a few other things, but that's the main thing. Now, in the past, you saw me make a mold for this mask. That's the original. I took a mold of that, and I made that in bronze. This mold is called a jacketed mold because you've got the silicone rubber, and then you have a jacket of plaster. This is plaster gauze that I wrapped it with. You can see how I did that here. Now, I've made lots of molds like this. These are really good if what you want to take a mold of is one-sided, or if you don't have a lot of rubber, or also if your rubber is very thick and won't run off. That's really important if you're going to take a jacketed mold. There's another kind of mold that's a little bit easier to do, and it does take more silicone, but it takes less prep work. And that's called, I call this a dump mold. I don't know what the real name for it is, but I call it a dump mold because you just dump the silicone in. So it starts out as a solid block with your thing inside that you're trying to replicate, and then you cut it open and remove what you had inside. And then you can pour in whatever you want, open it up again, and take it back out. Like I said, I call that a dump mold. That's what we're going to be doing today with this little silver heart. The way that I like to do that is by using Lego bricks. I will build up a wall around what we're molding to contain the silicone. So the first thing that I need to do is attach a sprue to this heart. A sprue is, simply put, it's a pathway for material to enter your mold. So what that's going to look like in this instance is I'm going to use this sprue wax. I'm going to take a small piece like that, and I'm going to attach it to the original. We call this the model. The original part is called the model. I'm also going to use this sticky wax. This is something we use in jewelry that is kind of like hot glue, but it's a wax, and you use it to stick things together. I'm just going to take a little bit of heat, get some sticky wax onto the sprue. Get that hot again and stick it onto the model. And now I take the model and I place it into that sticky wax and hold it there until it cools off, holding it in place. So now that that piece is well attached to the base, I can start building up the wall around it. This is a great excuse to play with Legos again, because we all know how fun they are. So now I've built up a solid wall that is above the level of the model. The next step is to apply a mold release. Even though silicone tends to not stick to anything, it's always good to have a mold release on there just because it helps everything pop free nice and cleanly. That should do it. And that needs to dry before you put the silicone in. So we can set this aside while the mold release cures and get our rubber ready. So you will need your silicone rubber, you'll need clean mixing containers, something to mix with, and a way of measuring the rubber, either by weight or by volume. It depends on which silicone you're using. I like to use this little drug dealer scale that I got from Harbor Freight. So I'm estimating how much rubber I'm gonna need, and I made a little mark on this container. So hopefully that will be enough. When you're doing this, you have to account for the weight of your measuring device. Make sure that the scale reads 0 with the measuring cup on it. Now I'm going to put in part A. So now that I have the correct weight marked on here, I'm going to pour part B into the same container at the same weight. So I have to zero out the scale. That includes the weight of the part A mixture, and add part B. Now, with larger volumes, you'll want to do this in 2 separate containers. That way, you can ensure that you don't put too much in accidentally, because once it goes in here, it can't come back out. But in a small volume like this, I feel confident that I can put the correct amount in and mix it thoroughly enough not to have any problems. All right, so now that I have them in here in a 1-to-1 ratio, I'm going to mix them up very thoroughly. And you have about 20 minutes to work with this total, so you have to work pretty fast, but the small volume is easy to work with. Make sure that you scrape the sides and the bottom of the container for any unmixed material, because that's where it will tend to collect. Now, stirring this can whip air bubbles into the material, so if you have access to a vacuum, it's often a good idea to vacuum the silicone before you apply it to your model. In this case, I don't feel like vacuuming this, and I don't think it's going to be a problem. Now that that's thoroughly mixed, I can apply it to the model. I'm trying to pour off to the side so that the rubber will rise up around the model and encapsulate it. Pouring directly over top of the model can contribute to getting air bubbles in it. Notice at the bottom it's still a uniform color. We didn't have any unmixed material waiting in the bottom of the container. That would be a warning sign if we found a bunch of streaky white and pink rubber down here. So now the rubber has been poured into our flask, our casting wall, or molding wall. The rubber is in the thing. So now that the rubber has been poured around the model and it's contained within this dam, we basically just let it sit until the rubber cures. In this case, that will be about 6 hours. Now, you might notice here there are some air bubbles coming up, which is to be expected since we didn't vacuum this. So something that we can do at this stage without vacuuming is to vibrate it. That helps knock a lot of the bubbles loose. So what I'm going to do is bring this over to my band saw. And it's been about the working life. The pot life has pretty much expired. We got about 20 minutes to work with it, and that's gone by. So I'm gonna find a safe place to set this down and let it cure for about the next 6 hours. Okay, so I let that sit overnight. So now we can pull it out of the Lego bricks and see the mold that we've got. Here's that puddle of sticky wax that attached the model to the base. So when you use Legos, often you'll get these little tabs where the silicone seeped in between the different bricks. Those don't bother me, and they just come right off. You can pick them off easily. If they bother you, you can use another material to make your dam, like foam core or cardboard or wood, and you won't have lines like that show up. But they don't harm the mold and they don't bother me, so I just keep using it. I'm going to use an exacto knife with a very fresh blade in it. It's important that the blade be new and very sharp. Do yourself a real smart guy favor and don't use a dull blade, because it's going to make everything harder for you. I might even end up changing the blade before I'm done cutting through this, because it's going to get dull in the process. So I'm cutting in a zigzag motion. That will help the mold lock back together in place after we remove the model. I'm not the best at this. I've seen people who can do it and make it look really good. I'm not quite that good. And when you're doing this, you want to try to avoid nicking the model with the blade. You've got the mold already. You can pour something else in there and the nick won't show up. But if you nick your model, you'll just have to do more work to fix it. I'm cutting on the back side of the model. So that way, even if I do nick it, it'll be hidden. And also, if there's a seam line from these cuts, it'll be in the back as well. Alright, so there is our original. Nice and clean, in perfect condition, and there's our mold. One other thing that I'm going to do is cut away at this entrance just a little bit to make it more of a funnel. And that makes it easier to pour in whatever material you're going to put in there. Now I'll melt some of this injection wax that you saw me use in the last video, and we will try casting wax into the mold. Once you've got the wax in there, you can give it a little squeeze. Try to drive some air bubbles out. There are machines that will inject the wax in under pressure, and I have one, but I didn't want to show it in this video in case you don't have one. Alright, so let's see how that turns out. Okay, I think the wax has cooled inside enough for us to pull it out. So you can see some of the smaller details, like these here, didn't come out here. That's just because the wax didn't get down into that part of the mold. Same thing with these here. And that's something that you learn about every mold. You'll have to get used to what areas need more attention. But overall, this will work for us. We can build these back up if we need to. Or the great thing about wax is I can just throw this back in the pot, melt it down, and cast it again and get it right this time. So now I could take this and I could cast it in metal, either silver or bronze or gold, whatever we wanted from the wax. I can take the mold, make as many more of those as I want, or we can cast urethane or more silicone or acrylic resin into it. We can even cast low temperature metals, but I'm going to show you all of that in another video. So please hit like if this was helpful to you. Please subscribe so you can see more, and I'll see you again very soon.